Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Project Constitution. Joining me tonight with my guest host is Kelvia Campbell, conservative KFC on X. And tonight we are excited to bring you a very special guest, Mitchell Meech Manley, also known as Artifacts Memoriam or at Artifacts Memoir on X. And
Give them a
yeah,
follow.
so Meech first met Charlie when he was 16 years old, um, at the very beginning of Turning Point USA, when Charlie was still relatively unknown. He gave Meech his personal number and told him to text anytime he wanted to come to events. From there, Meech got deeply plugged into the organization, working in multiple sectors and even joining Charlie on tour for as a photographer and videographer. He stayed with Turning Point for years because of his loyalty to Charlie, but eventually left due to deep frustrations within the leadership and the direction of the organization. Um, Tonight, we're going to hear his perspective on what it was like inside Turning Point, what he misses most about Charlie, the details of that fatal September day, what prompted him to speak out against Turning Point 2.0, and the professional fallout that followed from that. So, without further ado, Meech brother, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Colin. And I do want to correct you real quick. I actually met Charlie when I was 15 years old, not 16. It goes back
50.
farther than that. And no, I mean, I'll take you back really quickly. And it was the summer of 2015, and I was a young high school student, very interested in history and politics. And I got invited by my quarterback at the time. I was a center and I played high school football. And my quarterback invited me to go to a Young Conservatives Leadership Conference up in Colorado. Turning Point USA was not obviously what it is today. It was still just a very small kind of grassroots organization. It was in its kind of early years, and Charlie was still trying to get it off the ground. He gave like a 5 to 10 minute sales pitch and said, if you're interested, come and talk to me. And so I did that. And he gave me his personal cell phone number, like you said, and he said, I'll fast track you into events and let's get this thing going. Let's get involved. And I did that. And the first event I went to was Winter in West Palm Beach, 2015. And from there, it was just kind of off to the races. I did CPAC 2016 with Turning Point USA. And then from there, just continued, throughout high school and college, a kind of early career as a young student activist for Turning Point USA. I went to a college that Charlie Kirk himself recommended. At the time, he was suggesting Hillsdale College and the King's College in New York City. So I ended up going to the King's College in New York City. I actually managed to receive the final Turning Point USA scholarship that they were offering. It wasn't much, but it was about $750. And, at the time, anything helps, right? So I got that. And from there, started interning for Turning Point as a college student. By that point, they had kind of relocated from Chicago out to Arizona. So I had a hand in building their headquarters. I worked very closely with Tyler Boyer, helping to kind of design that headquarters, helping to build it out, helping to get contractors involved, to get the TV walls built, everything that you could ever imagine that goes into building a headquarters at a grassroots level. I kind of had a hand in, and it was great. It was the experience of a lifetime. We all kind of believed in Charlie. We had the same vision for what we were hoping for this country to be, and we had no idea what it would end up being with the Trump administration and the presidencies and the elections and the tours and everything like that, right? I don't think any of us envisioned what it turned into. And so from there, I actually had the chance to intern for the Charlie Kirk Show as well in 2020, before it became what it is today, right? The kind of behemoth talk radio show that is. I was kind of on the back end managing the Freedom and Charlie Kirk email, sending out cards to donors, sending books to donors, etc. And then from there, I transitioned over to Turning Point Productions as an intern in 2021. And I stayed there in Turning Point Productions until 2023. And I worked as a productions administrator and then as a producer, producing documentaries such as the FBI whistleblower piece, and then also daily shows like Jack Posobiec's Human Events Live. And then I left in 2023 due to, like you said, some frustrations, some things that I had felt kind of happening internally, corporately. As a 23-year-old, I didn't really know what was what. I was trying to play the game and and also still believe in the company that my friend had started and the values and everything like that. But it seemed as though, I had kind of exhausted my efforts, so to speak. And so I left. I went and kind of did my own thing. I became a freelance music photographer. Shot for DJs, shot some of the biggest stages in the world, EDC Las Vegas, Burning Man, etc. And then the election kind of rolled around, and I had some friends who worked with the contract crew that does Charlie's show and his tours and some of the rallies and his talk night events. And they said they needed some videographers for the election season. They had a lot of gigs coming up. And so I kind of started to do both. I did music and politics and toured with Charlie there from about May of 2024 up until the end of the election. That was the opportunity of a lifetime. And even into 2025, I still got contracted for gigs, right? The last event that I worked on the Visual Impulse crew was August of 2025, one of the last events Charlie did, which was the Pastor Summit. I was there from the beginning, pretty much up until the end, right? I took a new job like 4 weeks, right before, or 4 weeks before he was assassinated. So I've seen all the different phases of the company, so to speak. I've been there. I know all these people personally, right? And so it's interesting to me, the things that we've witnessed over the last 10 months, and that's another part of it. We can get into it, but you and I spoke earlier at the end of last year, and I wasn't ready to go public yet because I wasn't kind of sure what the implications would be. I also still kind of wanted to trust these people that I had known for the last 10, 12, 13 years of my life. They were going to do the right thing, that they were going to live up to the things that Charlie Kirk stood for, lived for, and ultimately died for. And I don't think that we've seen much of that in the last 10 months. In fact, I think we've seen quite the opposite. I think we've seen a just betrayal of everything that man truly lived for. I don't mean just like winning elections and selling t-shirts and having events, right? I mean like philosophically, fundamentally, the kind of man that he was. And so we can get into that, but once again, thank you for having me on. That's a little bit of my story, and feel free to ask any questions you might have.
Absolutely. So I guess a good place to start is you were there early on with the organization then. So I guess you kind of saw how the hiring process went, how everything kind of went through Tyler Boyer. Maybe you could give us a little bit of insight on that and just your thoughts, especially knowing what we know now. With everybody seemed to have been like kind of handlers around him. Like just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on it.
Just a side note, Erika claims that Charlie single-handedly picked everyone in leadership.
That's an interesting thing.
You remember that?
I haven't heard that. That's very interesting. I think that's
in a recent interview.
Interesting. Wow. I didn't have that experience necessarily. And I think that, from the beginning, it wasn't something that I really noticed, that, it almost felt like natural to a certain extent, right? Because I was a high schooler. I'd been involved from an early point. I didn't, really necessarily have to compete against people for opportunities, and interviews. I did have to go through interview processes, right? That's not what I'm saying. But the point is I already had relationships established. And so it was kind of an easy in from the activist side to the intern side to then the employment side. And I think that everyone kind of within that ecosystem has their own story, built on kind of relationships, how they got into the industry, who they know, how they got there, where they're going next, right? And when it comes to Turning Point, I watched people kind of externally be brought in, specifically by Tyler, and put into places where they either are today or have advanced past, right? And even in my position, I feel like just generally speaking, there were things that I had done or statements I had made and in chats that he was in, that may have indicated that I didn't necessarily agree with him ideologically fully, and I potentially may have been sidelined because of that, at the company. But as far as who he's selected, I think he's handpicked everyone from Andrew Kolvet to Erika Kirk. I mean, we know that he introduced those two. So I think that from the beginning, Charlie Kirk has been insulated by people who appeared to have his best interests at heart, and even me myself, I thought that they did have his best interests at heart and kind of would do the right thing in the hour of crisis. And I think we've all seen that in that hour of crisis, they have failed to live up to the words that they built their careers on, which is rather interesting to me as well. But that's how I see it for sure. Yeah, I've said it before. I think that like on both sides, Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action, your career is kind of made or broken based on your relationship with Tyler Boyer.
Yeah.
What about
He's the
the
gatekeeper.
culture of Turning Point? Yeah, definitely the gatekeeper. As far as like what's the culture inside Turning Point? Especially, I know there's a lot of stories about sexual assault allegations and stuff that have come out. Underage
Yeah, I'm
drinking,
interested to
these
see.
parties. So, like, what's your kind of experience on that? Have you seen any of that, or like, tell us?
Yeah,
kind
I mean, that was something that Charlie had to fight from the beginning. If you go back, like to even as early as I was going to CPAC in 2016, 2017, some of the early events at Turning Point, when they were ironing out their kinks, so to speak, I'll say it, there were a lot of incidents that didn't necessarily make the news, that didn't go public, right? Again, I don't know the full story of these things. I know kind of I had friends at the time who were maybe associated or knew people, and it was, kind of brushed under the rug. They were very much trying to make sure that those stories didn't obviously reach the media because it was before they were massive and what they are today. As far as anything in recent time goes, I don't really have any, specific instances or interactions or things like that I can document or attest to. But I think it's par for the course that it's a youth-run company essentially. Pretty much everyone there is under the age of 30, unless you're in a pretty high executive position, right? And even that was something that evolved very recently. I feel like over the last couple of years, there were always kind of people who were older, but they were on the advisory level or the executive level. As far as like management and day-to-day operations is concerned, it's far more like youth run. And I think that within that comes a certain type of culture, right? There's, I don't know, almost as if it's like a high school at times is how I describe it. There's a lot of gossip. It's not necessarily about the work that you do or the values that you live up to. It's about who and the political internal games you're willing to play, right? And as someone who was kind of got to know Charlie from the beginning, I struggled to see how a company that he had built had become something like that, where it was far less about your effort and the work that you've put in, et cetera, and more about just who and the political relationships that you've made, right? And so that's ultimately why I left. Part of the reason why, and ultimately why I came back as a videographer on his kind of internal media crew, because it wasn't with the Turning Point, corporate entity. It was with Charlie himself. I got to sit in front of him every day for 3 hours a day on over 30 college campuses, in the peak of his fame during the election, and not only get to spread the political message, but even more than that, get to spread his message of Christianity and unity, and help to kind of bring people to Christ and spread the good news to the generation that needs it most. And so, it was the honor of my lifetime, and I'm forever blessed to have been able to do that for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about like you and Charlie's relationship? Like, what was he like to work with? Like, did you, I know a lot of people, and we kind of touched on this, as far as leadership that was picked, people are like, they use it against us, and they're like, you really think Charlie didn't have discernment? Are you saying he wasn't smart enough to get a feel for people? And I don't think that's a fair statement, but what do you think as far as his dynamic in there and what he was like?
Yeah, it's kind of combined to the last thing we were just talking about, the people who were put into place to, I think, in my opinion, keep tabs on the things that he was saying, the direction he was going, the things he might eventually say. And that was a slow process, right? You can't just flood someone's environment with outsiders. They're going to kind of, red flags will pop up. But I think it's something that if you do very slowly, it's like if you drip water, what's the saying, you drip water on the rock, eventually you'll get, something in it. I forget the analogy, but you get the point. And I think that that's kind of the case, right? And it was something that I feel like there were just people that were brought in over time that didn't necessarily look at Turning Point in the same way that OG like idealists did, people who were there when it wasn't anything, when there was nothing to gain from it, when it was hard to kind of be a conservative. And with that, like Charlie himself, I watched kind of get very isolated from the company that he had built. And I felt like he didn't really have a say in it, didn't really have a hand in it, didn't have much influence in it. As early as I want to say maybe 2021, 2022, when the Stop the Steal had already happened and they were kind of gearing up for this next election. And I think that also explains part of why we saw him call this Doge audit in 2025, because I think Charlie was the kind of man who could prioritize things very well. And after 2020 and Stop the Steal, he recognized the potential impact that he would have going forward. And he viewed the last election as kind of an opportunity to deliver a mandate to save Western democracy, and he put us all into that. I was there, I was a part of that, and he did deliver that mandate, and obviously we thank him for that. But I think that kind of gets to the larger point of the betrayal that we've seen across the board, not only from the administration but from people who he himself trusted to hold the government accountable, to ask tough questions, to challenge the narrative, to all those sorts of things, right? And so, as far as our personal relationship goes, it was something that started out very much as like a friendship early on, because I was there from the beginning. I was texting him about my college admissions process, and then as I kind of became more involved in the company, and more people got installed, the company grew. I watched him slowly kind of get pulled away from the Turning Point, company itself, and he was just more focused on the show and these tours, which again, the election, which again, I think he needed to do, otherwise we wouldn't have won the election. But again, you have to think about everything that's happened since. But that's also why I rejoined the touring crew, because when I got on the first time I did a tour, and he sees me, we're cracking jokes as if I had never left, right? And so that's the kind of man that he was. He wasn't this type of person who would end a friendship based on ideological differences or because I left the company in 2023, right? He was a man of nuance. He was a very complex man. That's what made him who he was. That's what made him so dangerous, I think, to the regime too, is that he was able to not just make things a black or white issue like they want us all to think it is. And that's also part of my frustration with what we've seen from these people who are in his studio, is that they're just trying to, kind of, in my opinion, co-opting everything that he lived for and rebranding it in a way that is very demonic, quite frankly. So.
Definitely.
And
I think about what you're saying there. I agree with you on that. But another thing is Tyler Boyer, I've heard him say, I forget what podcast it was, but on a recent podcast, I heard him actually say that they particularly would try to keep Charlie out of the office and away from the day-to-day goings on at Turning Point intentionally, because that
was very clear.
Because he was a problem. He was a problem.
And I'll say this too. This was like going back to the question you asked about the culture, right? Is, as someone who was there from kind of the onset before it was anything, even in that position, I was made to feel by managers, directors, higher ups, that going directly to Charlie would be seen as an act of subversion, and you would be ruffling feathers, and it wasn't to be done, and it was never like explicitly said, but at times it kind of was also like no, like don't go to Charlie. It was like all hell would break loose if you did that, right? And if you think about the kind of person that he was, and just it's something that I think is very almost evil, where these people work to kind of create a culture where you're not supposed to go talk to the person whose company it is, and on a fundamental level, I get that, but also just like from the type of person Charlie was, I don't. And I saw that when I got back on tour with him, where we would just be cracking jokes and whatever else. And it's just sad to me, truly, what we're seeing take place.
Yeah, I agree. I'll just interject a little bit just from my experience. I remember thinking when I first moved out here. Now, I moved from Kentucky to work for Turning Point. And I remember thinking the culture in the building, like, the stuff that they kept Charlie from, I was like, this doesn't represent Charlie at all. I mean, the way that people act, like, you're not supposed to question things. You're not supposed to, like, emulate Charlie in any way. I mean, I feel like everything he stood for, they were against. And, like, the girls there dress, provocatively. And I'm just like, none of this seems like any of the values, like, this organization was built on. And that was one of the things that really surprised me. And there were even times where I was like, I would bring up Charlie's basic principles, and people at Turning Point would just look at me weird, like, that's what you believe? I'm like, that's what our founder believes. And you're a media guy, you're a content guy. I feel like a lot of people that work there, they didn't actually take Charlie's content in. They just watched TikToks, they watched clips, and it was just more Instagram stuff. And I don't really think they actually took Charlie in. And then, as you described, it doesn't help that they kind of isolated Charlie.
Yeah, there was definitely a big part of that taking place. I think that you have people who come into it for all sorts of different reasons, right? I'm an idealist. To be quite honest, I never wanted to be in front of a camera. I always wanted to be behind it. That's why I was in media. I'm only speaking up now because I feel like it's the right thing to do.
I'm the same way, brother. Same thing.
I just I can't. I ignored my feelings for like 10 months. I mean, that's why I called you and I talked in December, and I was hesitant to even go out because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, and I want to trust these people. And no, you're right, Kelvia, that there were questionable people employed, but I think you get that at any company. I think it's just unfortunate, kind of because it's Turning Point. But the point that I go back to is I did a documentary in 2022, and I interviewed an former FBI agent. In which he looks me in the eye and he says, if you don't think that your executive leaders, such as Charlie Kirk, or you yourself even are being monitored by the FBI at this point, then you're not really listening to what I'm talking about, right? And people will throw it back at me and they'll say, oh, well, that was in 2022. That was under the Biden administration. And, we elected Donald Trump, and Kash Patel's in the FBI now, and surely they're our friends. And okay, sure, like that is a theory, and you can choose to believe that. But I think that if we look back at what Charlie Kirk said just throughout his life, intelligence agencies operate at a different level than kind of we do as everyday Americans and voting people, right? They think about things differently. They move differently. They're also kind of much smarter and more advanced than the average person. And so to think that, again, a company with as young of a workforce as Turning Point USA was, as connected as its executives were to members of the administration, and then also coupled with that thread that I've put out recently, it's pinned on my profile, about just kind of how Charlie Kirk's brain was beginning to shift on things such as the Israel lobby, and also just continuing to wage war on the deep state, explains kind of a much larger motivation to silence him forever that's not being considered by people who, again, inherited his platform, and 10 months ago we're sitting in a studio with him, Andrew Kolvet, talking about Mossad and Jeffrey Epstein and all this kind of stuff. And now you guys are trying to label anyone who asks questions a conspiracy theorist and ultimately an enemy of the state, which is just hilarious in my opinion. When, a week ago we had Jack Posobiec lying to the American public and everyone who's paid by the Zionist media machine, amplifying that message, which ultimately is an attack on the justice system, and an attack on America, if you think about it. So these people who claim to be patriotic, good-hearted Americans are waging war on free speech, on the ability to question your government, on the ability to relentlessly ask questions. As Charlie Kirk said, that's the only thing that keeps us free, right? And the most evil part to me is that they're using his death to do it.
That means that the Warren Commission, which was the official report on the JFK assassination, was fraudulent and was faulty.
And by the way,
and
we have that
dozens of eyewitnesses and many first-person accounts.
Do you think there's any intel community involvement in this?
It's pinned to his channel, by the way.
I wouldn't
guys,
be surprised one bit.
Read it.
I am convinced, based on my own source.
You guys
Dave, I want to give you an opportunity, about 4 minutes to respond to that.
All the ways that Charlie
I also think it's just important to know that federal intel.
Definitely
versus my own.
How did these guys?
All right, you want to get into, I guess, like why you left Turning Point. I guess let's go there next.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I already described, right? I met Charlie at a very young age. I invested a lot of my youth into kind of building alongside him the movement, the company, etc. I put a lot of work in. I had, worked for a lot of different people. On the one hand, I was producing for Jack Posobiec, and I just kind of didn't really want to align myself with a person of his character, quite frankly, professionally anymore. I was 22, 23 at the time, and I was like, well, if I'm going to do media, I kind of want to make sure I have a clean track record, so to speak. I don't want to be producing for evil people, quite frankly. And that's kind of how I saw it back then, which is why the actions of this week, didn't surprise me necessarily. With Benny Johnson and Jack Posobiec and all these people amplifying lies to deceive a jury, and again, attack a foundational pillar of our republic. I think we need to call it how it is. It didn't necessarily surprise me. So that's part of the reason, right? I saw it for what it was 4 years ago, pretty much in 2022 when I was still there. I was like, this is, these people are saying one thing, and then they're going to do another. And whether it's in the small or the big, right? They did that on different levels. But also, I was frustrated. I had produced an award-winning documentary alongside Charlie Kirk, and at the time it ran to 500,000 views on Rumble in a week, and they didn't post it on YouTube for a variety of reasons. I kind of fought them on that. I wanted them to. It didn't end up going up. And again, I went in and asked for a raise during promotion time, and I didn't get it, and it's fine. But I was just exhausted, and I wanted to go do other things, and I did, and I went and had a great career in the music industry, and then the timing was right to go back with Charlie, and I did it. So again, I never stopped believing in Charlie Kirk. I never stopped believing in who he was as a person or his mission or anything like that. I left Turning Point on my own accord because I had some disagreements with some of the management structures and then the way the company was going. And obviously, I think we see now the end result of that. I felt a lot of that kind of taking shape early on. I didn't know what it was back then, but looking back in hindsight, I think it's clear what was happening.
Yeah, I think they were
you
kind
caught
of
it early
pushing good
on.
people out.
So you caught it at like 2021, 2022. You started seeing.
Well, I just noticed people starting to be installed in particular places over time, and people coming in. Right, like I was there before Mikey McCoy and Rob McCoy were introduced, before TP Faith was even a thing. I was there before Erika Kirk.
Side note, what do you think? What do you think about
Uh-oh.
TPUSA Faith? I'm just curious.
Well, I have some pretty strong beliefs, which is that Protestant Christianity is not necessarily in line with the church that Christ actually established, and that what we're seeing right now is kind of a direct result of kind of a satanic deception of Christianity, of good-hearted Christians, and they are I think the loudest and the most effective deceivers right now in our society. So I was never really a big fan of them at the time. I kind of questioned it when it was being established, and even today I don't really get a lot of it, but I think I also do at the same time, because it's very intentional. This is a spiritual war that we're in the middle of, and this is far more that than it is political, right? These people just use politics as the front to wage that spiritual war, because in my opinion they are demons, and so I did clock it early on. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't as rooted in my faith, but Protestantism is a satanic deception in my opinion, and it leads a bunch of good-hearted Christians into worshiping the same death cult that killed Christ, quite frankly. So,
and I mean, like the Turning Point Faith, to me, like that, I think that was a bad move from the start. I mean, that clearly was. I don't know how they got to Charlie, but I know Rob McCoy, in particular, was the one that introduced him to those NAR churches and the Seven Mountain Mandates. The new apostolic. I can't say that word right. Apostolic. I'm not good at that. Reform. And basically, like, what they believe in is like that they call themselves like false prophets and stuff, and like that goes against like everything that I mean, like, I'm not a big like Bible thumper or anything, but that goes every against everything that I've ever believed about Christianity. And for Charlie to be involved with that and to be pushing that was like, that shocked me. Like, that's one of the few things that I did disagree with him on.
Yeah, I think a lot of kind of what Turning Point ended up pushing, Charlie didn't necessarily have the most understanding of or say in at the time. Like, I think he was informed, obviously, but I don't think he had I don't think he was brought up to speed on everything fully. I think they kept him in the dark on a lot of things. I could be wrong. I don't know. I wasn't at the executive levels, right? But from what I observed, I feel like they almost kind of babied him and treated him like a yes man, and told him they were going to handle everything and insulated him. And I think that if you follow that thread I put out, like, you'll see, Andrew Kolvet's kind of rise to his inner circle and it culminating at SAS 2025, where they did the student panel on Israel, Mossad, JFK, etc. And I said this last night, but at the time I don't think it really raised any red flags because Andrew was already in his inner circle. But in hindsight, and watching the way that he reacts, watching the way that he looks at Charlie, I think it's clear the way that he feels about him, and also kind of what we've now learned, which is that they gave the FBI the text messages that were allegedly threatening Charlie's life before the shooting happened, to use Blake Neff's own words, right? And so that to me screams deep state cover-up. That to me screams, why aren't we asking questions? Who didn't do their job that day, right? If Andrew Kolvet did give the text messages to the FBI, why then did Charlie Kirk still go out to the tent if precautions weren't taken? Or, why then did Charlie Kirk end up dead if the FBI knew beforehand? Who didn't do their job, right? And again, I think this gets to the greater point that I've been kind of shouting from the rooftops, which is, this moment in our nation's history is much larger than just a trial. It's much larger than just the death of Charlie Kirk. It's a moment for us to pause, reflect, pray to God, right? And then truly look at the state of things in our country, right? We have our military that, is apparently about to merge with Israel. And, on top of that, just look at the things that Charlie Kirk was saying in the days and the months leading up to his death. And truly don't listen to what the people who are, lying on his lifelong friend's name from his studio now are saying, right? Just listen for yourself. Use your critical thinking that Charlie taught us all how to use, and think about the bigger picture here. Think about why all of these people now are coming out telling you that China and Russia are the problem, right? Right. When overnight, anyone who is an independent journalist and kind of speaks out against the establishment, I don't even consider myself a journalist, right? I'm just doing this for my friend Charlie, right? So when I met, when we were very similar in age, I was 15, he was probably 18, right? And so we're basically kids. We grew up together in the ecosystem, and I'm just kind of doing what I feel is right. And that's the most American thing I feel like anyone can do. And I'm being shouted down by people I've known for 10 years. I lost the job that I took recently, after leaving Visual Impulse, like I said, 3-4 weeks before the assassination. I waited to speak out 9-10 months, and I still ended up 2 weeks to the day getting fired, which is just another indication of, if you do have the courage to speak out, they will make sure that you feel it in one way or another. And I'm an indication of that. There are others who are as well. But that only makes me want to keep speaking even more. And that's what Charlie again taught us to do, because once we lose that, we're going to lose our freedom very quickly. And again, that's why this is a much bigger moment in our nation's history, because 1775, we had the shot heard around the world. In 2025, we had a alleged shot seen around the world, and now it's 2026. And I feel like more than ever in our nation's history, it's pretty clear that we are a nation subverted, right? At least 75, 80%, if not more, of our politicians are advocating values that are not for the American first. They are for foreign interests or their own interests, and that's not how our government should operate. Fundamentally, that's not what our founding documents say, and also God gives us the right to change things if we so want, and that's something that we need to reflect on, I think, as a nation this year, and also remind these people who are in government that they do work for us, right? And it's a greater point, but it is just time for us to reflect as a nation and not just listen to people who, for the last 10 years, have been telling you to question the government and ask questions and fight back, and now are telling you to get in line and shut up and trust the narrative. And if you don't, they're going to label you an enemy of the state, akin to Antifa, right? That's just asinine. That's insane. Think about how crazy these people sound.
Yeah, trust your own
Well,
eyes
and
and
I
ears.
know.
I mean, some of those people in Congress and in the Senate, like they'll tell you when they're asking, like we've had reporters, not me personally, but reporters have gone and asked them specifically, who is your allegiance with, Israel or the United States? And some of them won't answer at all, and then others will outright tell you Israel.
Yeah.
There's a problem with that. There's a huge problem with that. That should tell. I mean, trust your eyes and your ears. I mean, believe what you're saying. Believe what you're seeing.
And it's a greater thing to like. I'm only doing what I'm doing right now because I feel it's right. Again, I never wanted a platform. I never wanted to be in this position. I wanted to be in front of the camera. I was always behind it. And I think that Charlie Kirk said it. Many of our nation's founders have indicated as well. Like tyranny spreads when good men sit by and do nothing. And I think that for the last 50, 60 years, a lot of good men have sat by and done nothing. And that's how we've been subverted as heavily and strongly as we have. And they use things like, insurance, your job, money, whatever, labels, etc., to stop you from feeling and thinking the things that you know to be true and that you know to also be wrong, right? And from speaking out against those. They make you feel crazy for doing it. They push propaganda to make you seem as though you're the only one that feels the way that you do. Right? I felt this way for 10 months. I felt like I was the only one who was upset and confused what was going on, asking questions. But I was also too afraid to risk my job to begin going public and making my voice heard. It wasn't until I had the courage to step out and begin asking questions and put fear to the side, because again, fear is not from our Lord. I found a community of like-minded individuals who are actually very interested in the things I have to say, which again I didn't expect, I didn't want even to begin with. I just was so frustrated at the betrayal and the public mutiny that we're witnessing of one of the strongest pro-America youth movements that questioned the government, that held the president accountable. Charlie was going to DC almost every week there in 2025, trying to talk to the president, trying to talk him out of war, right? And the minute he died, we just watched the neocons go to war, shield the Epstein files, do everything that this man campaigned against. It's just, more than anything, it's heartbreaking, right? As someone who knew him, as someone who watched him go to campus every day and advocate for these people, right? It's in that thread too, that the Tucker Carlson clip. He talks about how we trust Kash Patel, we need perp walks. Pam Bondi's going to give us the truth on the Epstein files. Did any of that happen? Like not only was he betrayed by, in my opinion, people in his own circle, but also like people at the highest levels of the federal government. And I think there's evidence to indicate that this does kind of potentially go up all the way there as well. But not even on that sense, just on a philosophical, political level. Like you guys had the perfect opportunity to go full fascist, take over this country, destroy the left once and for all, right? In the wake of his death, and you didn't. You labeled Antifa a terrorist organization. You invited Jack Posobiec to the White House, and you guys played patty cake, and then you launched a new forever war, and you shielded the pedophiles and the Epstein files, and now we're all sitting here asking, what the hell was the last 10 years of our lives? Was MAGA even real? Did Charlie Kirk die for nothing? And anyone who dares to ask that question is labeled an enemy of the state. That's the reality that you're trying to get Americans to accept. Blake Neff, Andrew Kolvet, Paramount Tactical, all of you people who Ben Shapiro, who are propping up this lone shooter narrative, we're trying to label an innocent man guilty before he makes it to a jury. Like this is not America. You people are not Americans. You are enemies of the state, and we should not listen to these people. I want to make that perfectly clear. They are liars. They are deceivers. They've made it clear that they will attack justice in America to preserve their own interests, and that is about the most anti-American thing you can do. So again, I said it before, I'll say it again. Like, I don't feel like I've shifted from who I am. I've always been loyal to Charlie Kirk, the things that he would say, the vision that he had for this country, and I feel like in the last 10 months, everyone who had something to gain in the wake of his death is not asking questions because those questions threaten them. And again, I just ask why.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
I'm going to say one thing. One point though. I just want to say that Charlie did not die in vain. I will say that he was right when he thought that his death was going to be the catalyst for something bigger, that his death was going to be the catalyst for a revolution. I believe that. I see it happening. I feel it happening in my bones. what they did that day, they wanted a reaction out of us. They wanted to send a message, but it's the wrong reaction they wanted. They wanted that to scare us and to shut us up and into submission. But in turn, it stoked lit a fire under us to stand up and to fight for our freedom, to fight for this country, to fight for the values that we all uphold and believe in. And I really feel that happening. You know, I think that we're starting to come together. I've seen it now with like Candace talking to Hunter Biden and Anna Kasparian, myself, you know, reaching out to the other side as well, talking to you know, Lauren Peritra, talking to Z from Unfuck America Tour. Like, it's not just on the left and right. Like they keep us fighting each other. Left and right is just another way to keep fighting each other. All of us, what Charlie's death has made us all realize is it has exposed us to the deep state. It exposed us to their tactics, their propaganda, how they operate, and brought them out of the shadows into the light. And we all now are basically coming together as one, turning to face our true enemies, which I say all the time. Our true enemies are the elite Epstein class, and those are the ones that we need to all come together to fight against. Go ahead, Calvia.
Yeah, I was just going to say some things, and then I had a couple questions for Mitchell. But it was just unreal to me after he passed away to see the Trump administration completely change almost instantly. And I don't care what people say, you know, Trump, I don't know, you know, some people say he plays dumb, you know, but he's a businessman. I think he's greatly influenced. And as soon as Charlie was out of the way, you know, Laura Loomer stepped in. He was getting influence and advice from Laura Loomer. And I'm like, you're very influenced. And then, of course, I'm out here in Arizona and I see the GOP and we're fractured. I think Charlie would be upset to know that, like, after he left this world, like, we're completely fractured. We were divided over Israel, and then we became divided over Charlie's assassination. And people will talk about the Epstein files. They'll talk about other stuff, but a lot of people do not want to touch the Charlie Kirk assassination. It makes people very uncomfortable. I mean, you all posted stuff on X and you see how people react to it. It's like violent. People are so violent about like our opinions. And I was going to ask you, Mitch, since you actually worked close with Charlie, you know, you saw the evolution of the company. And this is a big question that everybody has. It's very divisive. Do you think Charlie changed his opinion there at the end? Did you see the shift in Charlie about Israel? People deny it.
Blake Neff has confirmed it. He confirmed it.
You said he did. You said what now?
Blake Neff confirmed that the texts were real. It's on my Twitter. They sent the text that he's leaving the Israel lobby, like, to the government. So yeah, he had fully turned the corner on Israel. And if you go through that thread that I made, he wasn't saying Israel. He was saying cultural Jews are anti-white. Flat out. Yeah. Cultural Jews. Not all Jews, but cultural Jews. And go watch the videos. They're on my profile, right? They're in that pinned thread. So it's not outrageous to say that he was not only challenging, you know, the commonly held beliefs of Zionism and the Israel lobby, etc., but was being pretty vocal, pretty bold, all things considered, right? And even there at the end, he was hurling accusations to Ben Shapiro as strong as the Jews own the media, right? And now finding out that the text messages were in fact real, that they were sent to the government, you know, that TikToks were sent beforehand. This just screams deep state cover-up, suppression of the Israel issue. And now we see what the government's done, not only the war, not only Epstein files, but also now this election stuff with China. It's just, it all points back to them. And Colin, you're right. It goes back to the point that you're saying, right? Which Charlie did always say that his death was going to ignite something in this country. I think many in his studio and company right now want you to think that just means vote Republican for the rest of your life and honor Charlie Kirk, right? And that is to me, what is the most blatant, brazen, demonic co-opting of, again, the strongest anti-corruption, anti-deep state, pro-American movement that this country has had, right? And if you go back to even 2018, people don't think about this. Candace Owens, Kanye West, and Charlie Kirk were in TMZ studios together in 2018, right? Imagine if those three were teamed up with no external involvement, no people are crazy, no, it's like waging war on these people, on the Israel lobby, on AIPAC, whatever you want to call it. Like, they would have such a pull from each of their own respective audiences, right, that it would be hard to counter. And so I think that's why we've seen some of the things we've seen with Kanye West over the last couple of years. I think that's why we've seen, now in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, these people try to label Candace Owens a crackpot and also get you to conveniently forget the 6 to 8 clips that are on my Twitter right now, where he's platforming Josh Hammer and Dave Smith, where he's platforming, Megyn Kelly, and they're talking about how Epstein is a Mossad agent, where they're having a focus group with students talking about these issues. And that's the point that people are missing. Charlie always got hate, right? I was there all the time. It's like, Charlie, why are you debating college kids? Charlie, don't you have anything better to do? Pick on someone your own size. And look at what happened as a result of Charlie going to college campuses in 2024, right? We delivered a mandate, and the youth delivered Donald Trump. The youth are who the deep state wants to protect and brainwash the most, right? That's why we had the tour title, You're Being Brainwashed by Charlie Kirk. Like you're being brainwashed from Charlie Kirk, like, because you are, like, in college, you're being brainwashed. And at that age, students' minds are still malleable, right? You're far less malleable when you've been a corporate, cog for the last 10, 20 years of your life, right? And you're, paying taxes, and you have kids. Like it's far easier to change your perspective at 18, 19, 20, 21 than it is when you're 40 or 50. And so that's why I think we have the boomer class the way that it is, right? And just kind of locked into this loyalty that breaks all logical sense and rational understanding when you just think about the implications of the crucifixion, right? And God not having a chosen people and who actually killed Christ. But as far as that's concerned, like that's why Charlie was such a threat. And I keep going back to that. It's he had such a grasp of the minds of the young people. And then we see what Turning Point's doing today, where they're just pacifying the youth. They're telling them, no, trust the government, trust your friends. And like, if we put our friends into government, it's okay. Like, that is insane. That's not what Charlie Kirk stood for. Go back to the early photos I have in my profile when Turning Point wasn't what it is today. It was all big government sucks, free market capitalism, freedom to the man. Like, look at the sponsors back in the day. It was a much more kind of libertarian almost approach to government. And that's why you have people like Thomas Massey involved. That's why you have people like Tucker Carlson involved. That's why you have people like Candace Owens involved. And now the establishment, the Zionist media machine, as I'm calling it, is working to label all of these people insane, label them enemies of the state, terrorists. Even Joe Kent, right? Look what's happened to him. I'm blessed that he followed me pretty early on there when I started speaking out, because again, it's not political, Colin. That's what you said, and I want to amplify this. That's why we're speaking to Democrats on these issues. That's why we're speaking to leftists, because they use labels to divide us and keep us away from the good versus evil, the people. We the people versus the oligarchs. And that's the one video that I ended my thread with, which is, we know Charlie was probably going to run for president one day because he approached this differently than all other career politicians who are bought and owned by Israel. He approached it from the lens of we the people versus the oligarchs. And when you go down that path, you get to a much greater path, which is who controls the finance, who controls the money, and who controls the banks. And then you go through history, you see, well, it's the same kind of small group of people that Charlie himself was beginning to criticize, that have essentially co-opted the entire MAGA movement. But then it begs the question, was MAGA even real? I mean, I know Charlie Kirk was, I know I am, I know all you guys are here, right? But was the MAGA movement the people who were paid to shill it, the people who are now propping it up as it's dying, Jack Posobiec, Benny Johnson, et cetera, was it ever real? Are you guys real? Like, and I don't think that they really are. We know the kind of people that these people are. Benny Johnson is a documented plagiarizer. Jack Posobiec's a former intelligence officer. So it just takes very minimal digging to figure out who these people are. And they're propped up by millions of dollars in an establishment that Charlie himself said he was ready to walk away from. And I think that if he had done that, it would have been a massive undertaking for the state to deal with, one, but also, I'm writing a book on this as well. they have been working to make sure that we do not get to this point since the reconstruction of Germany post World War II, and also the foundation of the nation state of Israel. When Mossad was created, they started working with the federal intelligence agencies, in my opinion, and slowly pacifying the American public, slowly introducing things via Hollywood, via the internet, etc., that corrodes the core of the Christian American society as it was intended to be. And now we're just stuck in this state of disarray and slop where everyone seems to be working for Israel or another foreign government before they work for Americans first. And anyone who wants to advance the interests of America first, whether you are Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Joe, anybody, right? It doesn't matter. And even people on the left, I would argue too, like you can't make it in this without touching the wall. I'm going to be very, very blunt, right? And that's kind of what it comes down to. And that begs the question on the 250th year of our nation's founding, right? Is this country actually ours? Who runs this country? Charlie was asking that question on Tucker 3 months before his death, right? And I said he would find out too soon, because that's just how I believe. But again, as Charlie said, speak truth to power, ask questions, and use your own spiritual discernment. Right now, it is more important than ever.
Yeah, we are an occupied nation for sure. That's what I believe. But to go back to your other, what you were saying before is I think the shoe's on the other foot now. I think Turning Point has now become a weapon to subvert our youth, to control, brainwash our youth.
For sure.
Without a doubt.
Undo everything he did.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like a pacification, and I think that, I've been asking the question, like, how are these people in Charlie's studio able to say the things that they're saying so brazenly? Like yesterday, they came out and said that Charlie cared so much about standard time, and this was one of his biggest issues. And I'm like, none of you people have talked about the deep state once. And that, again, just kind of, they don't have to say it. They're saying it by not saying it, right? And by not saying it.
They are the deep state now. That's the problem,
exactly.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
Yeah.
They hit it head on,
Collins. But they prop it up. They support it, right? And we saw that with Thomas Massey, one of Charlie's best friends in politics. He's been in office for 30 years. The minute the Trump administration says he's got to go, Turning Point USA kowtows, and they put out statements. They do what they have to do, right? And that's embarrassing. You guys should all be ashamed of yourselves, quite frankly. It's disgusting.
That pissed me off more than anything right there. That was one of the things that really pissed me off because he was he was one of Charlie's favorite congressmen. There are multiple videos of him talking about how Thomas Massey's his favorite congressman.
We loved him.
And they just completely turned on him because Trump told him to.
There's so much to me that was frustrating. That, when Blake Neff came out and said we wouldn't know how Charlie would feel about this war in Iran, when there's a 16-minute video of him talking about we do not need to go to war. We need to talk about the isolationist approach. We have to philosophically, give that a political approach more airtime because it hasn't gotten it. He calls Lindsey Graham pathologically insane, and now Blake Neff is writing soft neocon puff pieces for Lindsey Graham. It's brazen. It's in your face, guys. You just have to be smart enough to recognize what it is and call it out and not listen to it. Right? It's all Fedslop. Like think critically, speak truth to power, ask questions, and if they don't respond to your questions, it's like why? Right? You just got to keep asking why. Who benefited the most? Etc. Start with the same questions Charlie would ask about JFK, and I think the onion begins to unravel.
Yeah, about the being brainwashed or whatever, about Turning Point being there's even a video back maybe 3 or 4 months ago, at ASU, there was an Unfuck America event that they were trying to get canceled. The Turning Point was, and Erika
I heard
went
a little
to
bit about that. Yeah, I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah, Erika went there in person and was basically caught on camera berating the students in that chapter, for not, and she actually said the word counter programming them, like counter programming, like that's right there is an intelligence term. So that right there was like raised the antenna, the red flags to me that this is definitely an operation. It's nothing but a psychological operation. Turning Point is like a tool for the deep state to psychologically warp our youth's minds and control them. And also, not only that, but using AI now they want to build profiles on everybody. So they basically know everything about them, what propaganda works with them, what doesn't, so they know kind of what buttons to push. That's kind of what I feel is going on there.
No, it's frightening, honestly, kind of watching how quickly it's been co-opted and how quickly it's shifted away from the core values that it once stood for. And again, it's being sold by people who claim to love America and stand for truth and justice and freedom. And again, do they? I don't think that they do. I think that they are force feeding you a government narrative, and they're trying to convict a man who hasn't met a jury yet, right? All the things I've said already. And you're right. It is very much, you look at kind of what comes out, what's been being posted, what some other people are posting right now, just the the TikToks that they're trying to put out. I also heard that they might be sending students out to debate as well. I haven't confirmed that, but it is very much an interesting repositioning from the corporate level, and we'll see if it lasts. Right, I'm very doubtful. I'm very skeptical. I think that common sense and reason and truth and justice will ultimately prevail, and that these people will eventually get exposed as the frauds and the demons that they are, because these people, as much as they claim to stand for Christ and the truth, they don't when it's time to. And again, I think in moments like these are when people's true characters and nature is shown, more than any time in the past when it was easy to do so. Now is when it really comes down to it, And I think we've seen a lot of these people don't live up to the words that they put out there every day. And so that to me has again been the most surprising thing. Is it's been really hard to unpack, 13 years of my life where people I knew who told me that, they were going to stand for truth, justice, X, Y, and Z. And I saw them do that, here and there over the years. But this is the time, in my opinion, to do it. It affects us all the closest. We all knew this man and cared for him and believed in his vision. And in a way, loved him deeply, like in a fraternal, brotherly way. And you guys are all just doing what is easy. And it's disgusting. And what's funny to me, though, is people talk about how hard it is to do what I'm doing. You're doing the brave thing. It is. Don't get me wrong. I've had to face immense pressure. I've lost my job, whatever. But at the same time, it's been very easy, right? When you speak the truth, when you stand for truth, it's very easy. It just begins to flow, and that's what I've found. And it's been an enjoyable process so far. And I can't believe we're at this point, right? It's kind of something I put out last night. It's how did we get here? What is life? It's crazy when you look back in hindsight, and hindsight's 20/20, as they say.
Can I ask something? Yep.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
I think I saw you. Yeah, Mitchell. I think I saw you post one day on X. I think you were tweeting at Blake and them. Didn't you say you were familiar with AI, like them using AI prior to all this?
Yeah, I mean, I used to make. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh well, I was just gonna say, you can answer that. But could you tell early on? Were you at America Fest?
Yeah, last year.
Did you go to America Fest? Did you know that recording was fake?
Which
Did you
one?
hear it?
Which
The
one are you talking
one
about?
where he's appointing Erika.
I didn't look too heavy into that, because whether or not that's real or not, what I pay attention to is that, I did mess around with AI stuff when I was there. I taught them kind of how to clone voices early on with 11 Labs and things like that on the production side of things. And even when I was producing for Jack Posobiec, I said last week, I've, not proud of it, man enough to admit it, but I made deep fakes for Jack Posobiec when I was producing. This is back in 2023 when AI was not obviously what it is today, not nearly as advanced. I look back on them and I'm like, wow, these are bad. 3 years later, I'm like, wow, this is really bad. But it worked right at the time, and AI wasn't where it is today. And all that to say, right, I didn't get into the weeds on that video or anything like that. What I did kind of point out is just hey, no, you guys are trying to convince the public that you would never use AI, that you would never do this one. As far back as 2022, 2023, I was doing it in your own walls. So that's again just another instance of these people just kind of brazenly lying, or maybe not lying brazenly, but lying by omission and tactfully not giving the full side of the story, right? And that in and of itself, I feel like is kind of dishonest.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And also, you were what was your thoughts on Erika? Because you were there when she came into, when she met Charlie and she started coming around. Like, what was your thoughts on? What was your?
She was hardly around for one. So it's like coming around is a big term. She wasn't around much. And
how did Charlie change when she came into the picture as well?
I don't know if he changed much, to be honest. I think that what people fail to consider, though, is that, hypothetically, if Erika Kirk is not the faithful Christian, trad wife that she claims to be, which I have my doubts, I think many of us do. If she was to not be that, then would it be possible for someone like Charlie Kirk, as intelligent as he was, as brilliant as he was, as articulate as he was, to still be honeypotted or subverted by someone who had ulterior motives in spite of that? I think the answer is still yes. And it does not attack Charlie as a man, right? I think if we look throughout history, some of the greatest men throughout history have been betrayed, have been subverted, have been honeypotted, have been, made to believe that people that they think they can trust and love ultimately don't. And so for someone in Charlie's position who had been in politics from as early as 17, 18 years old, thrust into the political ecosystem, to have someone that he considered a friend, Tyler introduced this young blonde woman into his life. I think that it may have been easy for him to have been kind of led into a path that he thought was one thing and it ended up being another, right? And that's kind of all I'll say on that. But I think that to not think that, you're very naive. And I think that you just need to go look at history, read the Bible, look at how even the greatest Christian men have been betrayed, right? It's not a knock on their character. It's not a knock on who they are. It's just we're in a world that's run by Satan, and evil people like to deceive the good-hearted, innocent men. And that's where discernment is key. That's where you have to always be watching your six. And I think that it's just tragic. And or she's just, the one woman in history who hasn't grieved like anyone else. Guess we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you know my thoughts on her. I've posted quite a bit.
You can
about
see
her.
some of my thoughts if you want to scroll through my Twitter. They're out there. They're out there. She was not around much. I very much question her actual involvement on the operational side. Again, I think Tyler Boyer is probably pulling the strings still to this day. I don't think that she's necessarily the one in charge of things on a day-to-day operational level, right? Because I know Charlie wasn't. So, again, I'm skeptical. I don't think they're going to be transparent either, which, again, is kind of not in line with the truth. So you see who these people are, even though they tell you one thing, you just have to look at their actions, and it reveals kind of the true nature, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah. Let's see what else. What about? Okay, so obviously they've continued, even though Erika said they weren't going to, that would be cringe for them to keep posting on Charlie's account after he's dead, post on a dead man's account. And they've continued to post on his account since he's been dead. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's just morbid and gross, and it needs to stop. And if Blake and Andrew want to have their show so bad, they should go start the Blake and Andrew Neff show, or Blake Neff and Andrew Kolvet show, and do their own thing and see how long it lasts, right? I don't think that without Charlie's platform, these two bozos would be around much longer. It's kind of like Turning Point propping up the administration. I don't think if that was happening, the admin would be too popular, right? And kind of in the same way, I don't think if Andrew Kolvet and Blake Neff were using Charlie's legacy and company to prop themselves up, I don't think they would be seen as too popular right now. Because again, nobody knew who these people were before Charlie's death. Blake Neff didn't have a Twitter, allegedly, created it September 19th, I think is the date on his ex. But again, we know Blake Neff is a documented racist and sexist who got fired from Fox News working with Tucker Carlson, has not publicly apologized for it yet, was just kind of shuffled in to the Charlie Kirk studio, slowly kind of ascended to right in his inner circle, and then was in the right place at the right time. I also don't know why he was even in Utah that day. As someone who toured with Charlie pretty regularly, I don't remember seeing Blake making appearances too often, right? So, yeah, there's just a lot of questions I have on these people, and it's I don't think we're going to get answers anytime soon, and that's really telling to me.
Speaking of that,
That's
you
another
say, obviously
thing.
Blake wasn't supposed to be there that day, or it was abnormal for him to be there that day. I mean, but also, you said you used to work for Visual Impulse as well, or did work for them, and another person that it was very unusual for them to be there was Terrell Farnsworth, because from what I understand, he never really went to those college campus events. He was like he handled like the bigger like stadium events and stuff. He really didn't do the college campus things. Can you speak to that any or?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like he was not usually out there unless we had an event later in the day, kind of running in tandem. So we would do a lot of, we'd show up early in the morning. Charlie would have a tabling, and then we'd have a night event later, and Tara would be flown out to support those, or we'd do a rally, and he would kind of be directing that. So yeah, it was interesting that he was there as well. That was an interesting just fact. There were a lot of people there that day that I didn't really see there regularly. But again, I toured pretty heavily 2024. I did a handful of tours in 25, and then the last event I did wasn't a tour. It was a pastor's retreat in California. So things could have shifted on the back end there, kind of towards the end. I don't really know. But again, other things that are kind of weird to me is how large that stand was that he was sitting on, the platform. We had used platforms in the past. They're about an inch or two tall, maybe, to give him just a little bit of lift. But that one sure looks like it's 4 or 6 inches tall. And again, it just didn't seem normal to me. So there was a lot there that doesn't add up. And again, I think that for the people who are at a studio telling you to just not look into those things and not ask questions it kind of just reveals their true intentions here, which is to hide a greater evil. And that again goes back to this isn't political, this is spiritual, and we're fighting a larger evil.
Do you all think the SIM card is actually with the FBI?
I think they have already admitted it was on a flash drive. And that's where the contradiction comes up. And that's where some of my questions have started, because I was told, at least if my memory serves me right, that they did hand the SD cards over. But we found out in the trial, I believe, that it was a flash drive that had been, footage dropped off, and that's interesting to me. And I put out last night, just roll the tapes from all the cameras and the audio. Like, just show us. If you guys want us to believe this is a lone shooter so bad, show us the bullet entering his neck. We've all seen, the one angle. I know you guys had a Black Magic running. It was 4K, probably at 60 or 30 frames. So should be a great recording, and also same with audio. I feel like just for the sake of truth, public interest, right? Put it out. It's not hard. Just release it. And why they haven't is again another question. I think we should get that evidence hopefully in the trial if Tyler Robinson makes it, right? It's another thing I'm worried about. This preliminary hearing did not go too well, and I think that we've seen Jeffrey Epstein, who allegedly killed himself, maybe not, right? FBI was probably involved in that. To think that they wouldn't try and cover their tracks by taking out someone like Tyler Robinson, I think again is naive, right? And we need to be talking about these things openly, because the less we do it, the easier it is for them to do these types of things, and then we have to react to them, right? If we're calling them up before it happens, it's much easier to look back and be like, no, we kind of called you on that before, and what's going on here, I don't know. It's kind of the way I operate, so.
I agree. Speaking out's important on it. I guess that's a good place to get into. Like, what that day, what was your where were you that day when you heard it? Or did you watch it live when it happened, or when did you see the video, or have you seen the video? And kind of what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was, working. I was 10 days into my new job, Maricopa County out here, and a friend of mine had texted me. He loved Charlie just like I did, and was like, they shot Charlie. And for me, it was one of those things that I've been on tours before. I was always worried that potentially someone would walk kind of right up in front of him point blank and try something, right? Because, again, it was a grassroots tour. This wasn't a political rally. This isn't Donald Trump. We don't have Secret Service. It's 24-year-olds throwing stuff together at the last minute, and Charlie rolls in, and then it gets really high energy, and we film a great debate, and then Charlie rolls out, and it's like it never happened. Right. And that was just kind of how it worked. Right. And so to think that it was this just high level, super secure operation, I think people kind of are kind of have the wrong idea of it. And it was very just still grassroots, kind of all just came together in the moment of. People would drive the stuff in, and it would just show up. It would happen. People would all put whatever was necessary into making that event take place. And then we would go on to the next city. Right. And so I think kind of as far as that day, right. And what I was doing, I was very much concerned that it was not what we saw, which was an alleged shot from a far rooftop. I was far more concerned with something up close and personal, point blank, because again, to try and manage a crowd of 3,000 people and to expect someone not to have a firearm at that distance is, again, I think pretty naive, right? And again, being in that situation, being in the position where that used to face Charlie, it was a concern I had whenever the crowds would get rowdy and there would be rooftops around. I'd be like, yo, like, what's going on? I want to check people. Like, it's a fear, right? We're in a political world. We'd have stuff thrown on us before. We'd have water thrown on us. We know if it was acid. So that day, I watched the video pretty soon after, obviously broke down, and they sent me home from work and they gave me a couple weeks off. And then, from there, just started looking very, intently at what's going on, kind of just observing with the lens that Charlie Kirk kind of gave me, the one that I kind of grew by being around him my whole life, right? And that is like, who gained the most off this? How are these people acting after? Are they living up to the things they're saying? They claim to be Christian. Are they living in that way, right? And every time I had those questions, I got the answer that was no, they're not, or this is kind of against what Charlie would stand for. And I thought that for a long time. I kind of ignored those feelings and just kind of stayed in my job and hoped that they would end up doing the right thing. And it just got worse and worse, right? The more that I would kind of pick up on. I tried really hard to ignore it. I stayed off of Twitter basically from January to when I went public, because I knew that kind of once I got involved in this, it was going to consume me. It might have implications. I might lose my job, and of course I did 2 weeks to the day of posting. So I think that as far as it's concerned, it impacted me very heavily even the day of, and I waited. I wanted to trust that these people who had inherited Charlie's platform were going to do the right thing, and I gave them about 10 months to do that. And at this point, I have a lot of questions based on just the type of people that you are, and you claim to know this man, you claim to be friends with him. You're attacking his friends, and you're not doing any of the real things that he used to do, which is attacking the deep state, which is holding the government accountable, which is doing the hard thing when everyone around you is telling you that it's wrong, right? Which is standing for truth and asking questions and being brave. And I think that we've seen none of that in the 10 months since his death, outside of a handful of people who then that same kind of machine turns around and labels terrorists, crazy, whatever else we want to use. So.
Well, what was the first point since in the investigation or whatever, where you really thought something's not right? We're not being fed the truth. Like, what was the first point that you knew something was wrong, that you kind of felt like, this is not right?
At the beginning, it was when they were trying to feed us a lone shooter narrative. I think that throughout history, that just has always fallen on its face. And then, when I found out that his security didn't call 911 and they called Ben Shapiro's security, that for me was an indication of a much larger conspiracy. And then you couple that with what I put on my Twitter this morning, which was Josh Hammer's quote tweet of the president back in 2013, where he's talking about a quick and fast public execution, and Josh Hammer says based. And if you recall, 3 months prior, Josh Hammer got humiliated by Charlie Kirk and Dave Smith at SAS during their debate during the debate on Israel. And then if you follow that thread and you go down, I think 2 tweets, you see his Megyn Kelly cry for help. And in that, he mentions that, his Jewish donors had been criticizing him because of that debate specifically with Josh Hammer. So it seems to appear that Josh Hammer had prior knowledge that this was going to take place, right? That's why he would tweet something like based like that the day before, in my opinion. It could be wrong, right, or whatever. But there's something much larger at work, a much larger evil here that people don't want us talking about, right? And everyone who does dare talk about it seems to feel the force of that machine one way or another.
Wow.
Definitely.
Now,
I agree. And
for
if
him,
you can't speak out,
I have to ask.
Go ahead.
Were him and Ben Shapiro friends? Candace described that early on in their career, maybe around the time you were there, Ben tried to sabotage them. Did you see any of that?
I didn't see any of that because I wasn't at that level necessarily. I was a 17, 18-year-old at the time. I think that's probably when that was happening. But again, I think you just have to look at Charlie's words, look at his last interview with Ben Shapiro, and you see his rhetoric. And again, I think Charlie was the type of person who's not going to just end a friendship that he built kind of the roots of this movement, right, with Candace early on over something like the Israel lobby. I think that he, after going campus to campus, was starting to realize that the youth, my generation and younger, the cat's out of the bag on Israel. Like it's not going back in. Sorry, like we're gonna have to address this one way or another. We're either gonna do it like I am right now, articulately. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna figure it out, or it's gonna be violent and forceful, because that's we have two options, right? And that's what history shows. I would much rather we talk through this and come to conclusions that are logical and in the best interest of this country and our people. But again, the founding documents lay out a framework that if this government is not serving as people first and foremost, we have a divine right to do things that are laid out, and there are instructions there. It's not going to be easy. It's not nice. But again, this is a much bigger issue than politics. This isn't just Democrats and Republicans. It's not 2012. Obama's not running, right? Like there are the levels of corruption alone from this administration are insane. They're not being talked about. The doublespeak, the establishment just taking over. Again, it all points back to a much larger force, and in my opinion, a foreign entity as well. So, Ben Shapiro, I don't know. I don't really care. I don't like him. He kind of has the same vocal intonation as Blake Neff, which is just like whiny and nasally, and I don't listen to them. It's like I don't spend my time listening to these people. You shouldn't either. Go read a book.
Neither does America either. I mean, just
exactly.
Rating.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I would caution people that like them trying to take our free speech rights and wanting to limit our speech and make stricter laws around our speech and trying to use like anti-Semitism as a way to do it or whatever. I would caution them, because speech is not violence. Charlie said that many times. Speech is not violence. It's when you lose your speech is when you get violence. When you lose that opportunity to talk and work out your differences with your brother and sisters or whatever, that is when it goes to violence. The speech is the last line of defense before the violence. So,
yeah, and I think we're close. I'll be honest. I think we are. I think people aren't taking that into consideration enough. Look what just happened to a man who wanted to use his voice, and who had only begun to indicate that he was going to start using his voice against a certain group of people. Look what they did to him, right? It was meant to be a warning. It was meant to be a sign, right? But they overplayed their hand. They killed the guy who told us all to never stop asking questions. I don't know how you guys thought this was smart. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Like, exactly. Where was the forethought on that? I don't get it. I think they all genuinely think we're just retarded and don't care. There are some of us who do care, and we're going to make sure that we expose you guys for who you truly are. So,
big time. The I mean the 30-odd, them trying to feed the 30-6 narrative was about the most retarded thing I've ever heard in my life. And anybody that backed that up, man, like, to me that was just I just, anybody who's shot a gun can tell you for sure that there's no way that a 30-6 would get stuck in his neck and not come out the other side, and also would not blow his whole head off.
And the minute Andrew Kolvet said that his spine, was like Superman and stopped the bullet, I was just like, guys, like, how dumb do you think we are, right? It's a litmus test, in my opinion. I've been saying this. They are testing us. The government is testing you. They're trying to manufacture your consent. They already know that they can abort babies and get away with it. They already know that they can rape and eat children and get away with it. So now they're looking to see if they can kill an innocent man and get away with it, and convict someone without proper evidence. If they can do that on top of the other two things, do we even have fundamental rights anymore? I'm asking that question. Like, do we? I don't know. I think it needs to be talked about. I think they know that after this, they can get away with anything they want. And that's why Charlie Kirk said questions are the most dangerous thing to an illegitimate regime.
Yeah, I agree, man. I guess you want to get into a little bit of... Go ahead. You got a question?
If they kill
Sylvia?
Tyler Robinson, yeah, I was just gonna say, we're a little concerned about Tyler Robinson's well-being. I'm just like, if he ends up dead, I mean, nothing's gonna be done about it. That's the scary part. It's just gonna, they're gonna absolutely.
I think all they can go off of is the probable cause affidavit if he was to end up dead. I might be incorrect in stating that, but it would fundamentally shift a lot of things. A lot of people who we have, hypothesized might have involvement here would obviously not be investigated. But again, I think that we can't really protect Tyler Roberts. That's up to people in much larger positions. But I think we're also expecting the same people who are involved in this to investigate it, right? And that's a bigger problem we have to wrestle with is, how do you hold the deep state accountable when they're the ones pulling the trigger and also conducting the investigations? It's hard, very hard.
And that's why I think we're heading towards a revolution, personally, because there's not going to be I think it's going to be very hard for us to get real justice, like these people being held accountable, the real people that killed Charlie or whatever, to have them held accountable legally in court. I mean, they're already being held accountable in the court of public opinion. Everywhere they go, they're getting. Everywhere they go, people know, you're the guys that offed your friend or whatever. You participated in that, or even if they don't think that, then they're like, you're the ones that betrayed Charlie and are pushing that slop on his channel. Like, they know that. Erika Kirk can't go anywhere without being called, a PDF protector. So that's a good thing. So at least they're being held in the court of public opinion. But yeah, I mean, that's a good broader question is like, how do we actually get real accountability for Charlie? Because like you said, the same people involved are the ones that are running the justice system.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were supposed to get accountability on the Epstein files, and we didn't. All right, and now we have contradicting statements. In April, Todd Blanche was saying, no, there is no evidence to support that he was a foreign agent. Now we have the VP going on Joe Rogan saying that, maybe he was working for Israel. We're never going to get justice there. And that's kind of the greater point I'm making, which is they already know. They have 20 years or more worth of documents on everyone in our government who's raped a kid or X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever's in the Epstein files that we don't actually know the truth of. And we haven't got accountability there. We know that those crimes implicate children. It would unmask the evil that controls our government, and they're not revealing it for a reason. So I don't know. I don't expect to get answers here, right? I don't expect any of that. But what I do expect is the fundamental pillars of this republic to remain, which is justice, which is innocent until proven guilty, which is, a jury to not be able to be tainted by propaganda. And I think that we have to go through this process first. And whatever the outcome is, I don't care. I don't care if Tyler Roberts is found guilty, not guilty, as long as justice prevails, because this is America and that's what matters. It's the same way as it was with Kyle Rittenhouse, and I think that all of these people who previously backed Kyle Rittenhouse and are now rushing to convict Tyler Robinson before he even has his day in court need to take a long, hard look in the mirror, because again, you guys are not American. You're career politicians who care only about yourselves and your side and your interest, which is the Uniparty, which is the nation state of Israel ultimately at the end of the day. And you guys all know it. You just don't want to say it. And we either can address the elephant in the room or we can't. And I think that a lot of that's going to come down to this trial, because this is justice is one of the foundational pillars of this republic. It's one of the things that we can fall back on in times of crisis, in times of disaster, whatever the case may be, right? And if it is able to be corrupted this easily by foreign influences especially, then we genuinely do not have a country anymore. And these people are propping up a dead horse, and it's time that we do something about it. But again, we can't do it on our own. We have to pray to God. We have to trust the Lord and seek his guidance first, fall to our knees in prayer, because I think that is where a lot of this nation has gone astray over the years. We used to be a Christian nation, and we've strayed so far from that. And I think that if we do those two things in tandem, we might actually have a fighting chance. I'm not going to say we're going to win. because they killed Christ, they killed Charlie. It's not. It's to expect us to make it out of this thing alive, I think, is also naive. But we can have some fun in the process, and we can try, and we can at least say that we stood for something instead of being good little goyim our whole lives, right? So,
it's better to die on your feet than on your knees. I forget the exact saying, but something like, and it's so true though. It really is.
Well, we're not going to surrender. We're not going to surrender.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You want to get
think
into a little bit about?
Necessary.
Yeah, I don't want to really. I think it is too. I'm not necessarily pushing for one because, but I don't want people to die. But obviously, I see the writing on the wall. I think it's coming, and I think we do need a reset.
You should have a national conversation, and it's like they don't even want us to talk about it, and that's the interesting point to me. I'm not saying like go storm your Capitol. I'm not saying that at all. I just want to talk about these things openly because this is America, and we're supposed to have free speech.
Yeah, if I talk too much about it, then next thing you know, they'll ban my channel and say that I was trying to incite violence, and that's right. Just ridiculous.
Right.
You want to go ahead? You want to get into a little bit about your last position and how you lost your job?
Yeah, we can a little bit.
Or whatever.
It's nothing too crazy. I don't know specifics of it, right? I can give you kind of my perspective on it.
Well, you can kind of tell us how. Yeah, you could tell like the tweet that you made. Kind of walk us through that. How you started to talk out, and then you were doxxed, and then how that ended up, all that happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks I still have around my kind of forced departure from Maricopa County. I got the new job September 1st. Charlie was killed September 10th. I started kind of just looking, asking questions to myself, and then bottled all that up until I couldn't hold on to it any longer. And then to people I knew personally, right? Tyler Boyer, a couple other people on Twitter, and never got responses there, was just kind of immediately blocked. And then ruffled feathers of, I guess, some people attached to them, and in a roundabout way had some information posted about me. And again, I'm not going to stop talking because you're posting public information, like whatever. It's not going to intimidate me, right? But at the same time, he then took it upon himself to, reach out to my higher ups. And then, there's also just the fact that I was working in politics as well, for an elected official. And the people that I'm, levying questions to are heavily involved in politics. So I think that to think that this wasn't in some way an act of political persecution is, again, naive. And it's part of why I waited to speak out so long, because I had a feeling it would happen, right? Because I know how I've been around. I've been in this space for 13 years. I've seen what happens. As much as these people like to say they believe in free speech, when it actually comes down to it, I don't think they do. And they don't really like people questioning them. So, that's kind of the long and short of it. You can read more if you want to on my profile. I don't really want to rehash it much more than that. But yeah, just again, someone as innocent as me, a 27-year-old, video editor who spent years kind of touring with Charlie, the minute I begin to just be like, hey, something isn't right here, feels like I get kind of the weight of the political machine levied against me. And, it is what it is. And I'm very happy to be in the position now where I can use my voice and speak freely. And that was something I said kind of when we were talking before this, I think, which is like, on the one hand, it's tough, right? I'm in not the best financial situation right now, but we're going to figure it out. And I think that, the freedom to be able to speak how I feel, my thoughts, my experiences, my perspective is far more, valuable than any job or title or salary, whatever the case may be. And again, like I was afraid to speak out for 10 months. Fear is not from our Lord. And I think once I realized that, I kind of just have been able to do what I'm doing very easy. And it's not, it's not something that I'm necessarily stressed about. I'm not worried. I'm not necessarily afraid. I'm not hiding because A, I didn't really want this to begin with. And B, I feel like I'm standing on the side of truth, and I'm speaking not only for Charlie, but also for Christ, right? And that's what it comes down to. That's what we're instructed to do. And I'm just surprised that more people aren't doing it, quite frankly.
I am too.
Yeah, I agree. I just have to say I want to point out the obvious, that obviously Maricopa County is where you worked, and Maricopa County is highly corrupt, and Tyler Boyer has a lot of influence in Maricopa County. So not that we have any evidence of that, but I would say that it's probably highly likely that he played a role in what happened to you.
Well, I have asked him a couple times on the timeline, but I don't know if I ever get an answer. It's kind of like the Charlie Kirk thing. I don't know if I ever really get the truth, but
he's like a cockroach. He operates in the shadows. You're never going to find out the truth from them, probably.
Yeah, probably not. But
have you gotten any other retaliation since talking out from Turning Point? And the reason I ask this is I know because like Kelvia, since she's been talking out, I guess she could tell you her story real quick, but her car was recently ransacked, where they broke into her car and ransacked her car, and they didn't there was valuables in it, but they didn't take anything of value. They just, to me, it just was like to send a message. But I'll let you tell her. She could tell that real quick, and then we'll go into whether you got any harassment or anything.
Yeah, so I don't live in the best area, so it was funny. Obviously I woke up, I went out to my car. I forgot where I was going, but obviously it was ransacked. My car looked like someone turned it upside down, and I was like, wow. So I thought it was just a crackhead or a homeless person. And I just kind of went about my day, and then I went to the car wash and cleaned my car, got it all back in order. Well, then I had a conversation with my friend, and she's like, you don't think that's related to Turning Point? And I was like, and then I thought back, and I was like, there was some weird indications. So it's like Colin said, I had a sterling silver chain right there on the console, and they left it in plain sight. They left my chargers, but I had a bag in the back seat that had my Republican Women's Club stuff, pins, and that they brought that to the front seat and dumped all my GOP and Republican stuff on the seat in the floor. And then Colin, I don't know if I told you this, my old Turning Point business cards were scattered. And then there was a folded American flag left on that. And the only thing they did take, which this could be homeless person or this could be Turning Point, the wagon as field reps, everyone got a wagon so they could pull their stuff around and set up their tents and stuff. Well, I still had the wagon that Turning Point provided for me, and that was the only thing missing out of my trunk was the wagon. But homeless people like wagons too. Homeless people like shopping carts and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Turning Point is kind of acting like homeless people these days, though.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't experienced anything like that, thankfully, but we will see. I'm not too worried, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see what happens.
You got anything else in particular that you want to say or put out there?
Not necessarily. Just I would encourage everyone to not be afraid of these people, to continue challenging them, to continue asking them questions, right? And I wouldn't be doing this if they were doing what they said they would do from the jump, which is, Erika Kirk said that there would be a place for people to ask questions. How would Charlie feel about this? And they would play a video of him. And I feel like at this point I've posted more unedited Charlie Kirk than they have, right? Since his death. And again, that goes back to my motivation, right? This is not about me. This is not for me. I don't want anyone to think I'm doing this because I have an ulterior. I want to gain a following. This is because I feel like it's the right thing to do, and I couldn't ignore, what I was watching take place. This blatant betrayal of a man that I cared a lot about and spent a lot of time with and helping to amplify his message, right? And so, for anyone who thinks that I, am a bad faith actor or have, something else going on, I just look at my track record, look at the time I put into this, Look at how long I waited to speak out, and then what happened in the immediate aftermath of that. And if you want to talk about it, I welcome it. Please, let's have a conversation. That's what Charlie was all about, right? He always said, every campus we went to, disagreements come to the front of the line. And I want to emphasize that because the people who now inherit his platform seem dead set on silencing any disagreement whatsoever. And they find really tactful ways to do it. They label you Antifa. They say you're attacking a widow. But, Charlie Kirk himself, there's a video on my Twitter, you can find it, said he didn't care when Erika Kirk got hate. She knew what she was stepping into in that role. Erika Kirk can't have her cake and eat it too. You can't be able to forgive Tyler Robinson and happy and giddy and kissing the president in the Oval Office, a couple days after your husband's public execution, but then not able to contain your emotions and an emotional wreck when people are doing the same thing that your husband died for, which is asking questions. You're either unfit to lead the company that he created, or you're acting in a way to hide your actual feelings or your intentions. And whatever the case may be, it's repulsive, it's gross, it's morbid. Nobody likes you. You just need to stop, quite frankly. So just give it a rest, y'all. We can see right through you guys, and it's just outside of it just being disgusting. It's not the Christian thing to do, and I think you all know that deep down, right? And we just need to call that out, plain and simple. We don't need to get brash. We don't need to get vulgar, right? We just need to be direct. We need to be articulate. Stand on the truth. Stand on the side of Christ, and I think God will reveal more, as He always does. But no, outside I probably have a couple more minutes. But if you guys have any questions for me, I left over. But I'm always happy to come back to.
Yeah, you're always welcome back on the show
ask
for sure. What about you? Go ahead, Kelvin. You got any questions?
I was going to say, kind of what you said. We need to keep Charlie's legacy alive, what he really thought and believed. And I was going to ask you, I've heard that they've deleted a lot of his content, a lot of his digital content out there. Have you seen that?
It's a soft deletion on the Spotify and Apple Podcast side. It only goes back to a certain date. What I was told when I inquired to someone, it was that the cost to maintain the archive on those platforms was too high, which if you think about how much Turning Point has made, it's one of those things where the cost
they
doesn't
made
matter.
$400 million in the wake of his death. Exactly.
If you're trying to honor your dead CEO's legacy and you just made all this money, so there's that point. But it all does still exist generally that I've been able to find on Rumble. It's just a god awful platform to navigate, and you do have to kind of scroll endlessly, but it is out there, right? All the videos I've found primarily have been pulled from Rumble, and I try and post the links whenever I can. So yeah, it's out there, right? Again, you can use AI too. You can ask it hey, when did this clip air? Or what if you think you recall something that Charlie may have said, right? Look it up. It's out there, generally speaking. And that's again kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing, is just so they can't turn this man into a Republican electing machine who never criticizes his government. It's absurd and it's blatant. And I'm quite frankly just surprised that more people I know personally, right? Not even the people who are in fields of influence, just people I know personally aren't saying the same thing I am, right? And that's also another thing where I was kind of waiting to see if anyone else would, and doesn't seem like anyone is. And so, enough is enough. It's almost been a year. We should be able to talk about these things as adults and then get to the bottom of them, hopefully. And maybe we will, maybe we won't, but I think that waits to be revealed.
And I think that's important, actually, to make that point, is more people need to speak out, and hopefully you speaking out, Kelvia speaking out, will encourage more people with inside Turning Point to speak out. And not just that, but other people as well, that just you see what's going on, you see that it's wrong, and you need to speak out. It's, stand on your principles, stand on your morals. It's the right thing to do. And you Mitchell, you can attest to this. You can contact me. we can talk off record or whatever. I won't air your stuff. We talked in, I think, December.
Yeah.
I've had that video the whole time. I've never aired it. You asked me not to. Yeah, I mean, so like, if you have information that would be helpful to us for the investigation, please pass it along. If there's anything you can say off record, on record, whatever, come talk to us.
Yeah, it's one of those things I put out the other day. I just want to reiterate, if you are inside Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, the associated LLCs, and you notice something that feels off, you notice something that feels wrong, let someone know. Like stand for the truth, stand for what is right. Do not be afraid. Do not feel like by doing that you will ruin your life and your reputation will be tarnished. In fact, Charlie Kirk would be proud of you, I think, one. And two, there's a community of like-minded individuals who believe in what's right from wrong, truth, justice, morality, America as it should be for Americans, right? All the things that Charlie was fighting for, we are carrying on. While his company might not, there are a lot of us out here still doing it. And we would love to have you, like, truly. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be doing this. I don't want to be doing this. But I'm not going to let them rebrand my friend's legacy and take everything that actually mattered about his life and try and just shove it in the corner and act like it was irrelevant. And the only thing that mattered is winning elections and propping up Donald Trump, because that's not the man Charlie was. Charlie was very critical of Donald Trump, the administration. He was probably one of the only voices preventing us from going to war in Iran, and now we've seen what happened, right? And so, if you feel fundamentally that things are wrong, do not sit by, because that is when tyranny spreads, is when good men or women, sit by and do nothing. And I know there are a lot of good people still inside Turning Point USA. I truly don't think that everyone is implicated in this, right? I think that there are a lot of people who are afraid, who are scared, who are maybe caught up in contracts, whatever the case may be, right? And those people need to have their voices heard. They deserve to, right? They don't need to be made to feel like their lives will be ruined, like they'll be guilty by association, right? Like, just speak about what you felt. That's all I've done, right? I was not this important person, just a camera op who had different experiences, and I have feelings and thoughts and questions, as I'm sure many of you do too. So that's all I'd really say, right? Is again, just don't be afraid and trust the Lord and trust your own discernment and stay firm and rooted in the word, because there are a lot of demons out here in this world that is controlled by Satan, and they want to deceive you. And I think that's what a lot of people are not thinking about. They just think about this in terms of the political, and we have to think about the spiritual first.
I agree. It's easy for people to do the easy thing and just stay silent and not speak up and keep their head down. But it's hard to do the right thing, but you will be rewarded. Don't think that your life will be ended by doing the right thing. Honestly, the best thing to do is stand on your principles, do the right thing, speak out, let the chips fall where they may, trust God, leave it in God's hands, and you will be better as a result.
Remember, God already knows. God already knows. So you're just making all of us privy to the information that the Creator already knows. So you're not hiding anything except from us. And this world's temporal. What matters more is your soul, your eternity. The choices that you make here have an impact there. And think about that, guys. Even me too. I got to think about that too. So.
Absolutely.
What-
This person
Real
left a
quick.
comment here. Hold on a second. Mitchell, do you have a way for people to buy you a coffee or donate money to you?
I'm working on getting that set up. I will see if I can put something together tonight, and I'll throw it on my Twitter.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so go find him on X if you want to do that, guys. Go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, to all the people out there that we're talking to right now that are too afraid to speak out or too afraid to take a stance, these people want you to be scared. they want you to feel scared. They want you to feel intimidated, and they want you to think that there's going to be repercussions if you come out. And, it's like we said, God is to be feared. God is to be feared. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So, it's ultimately up to him. But, I would tell people it's not worth it. Like, yeah, I took a risk. I was terminated, for allegedly whistleblowing. But yeah, I think, the more we can do this, it's what Charlie would have done. Like, seriously, that's what Charlie would have done. And I think we need to emulate him more. And it's going to take people like us for anything to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you just have to go back and watch some of his old debates that he would do on campuses if they're available. I haven't looked for them. I'm sure they are, but students would come up and ask all the time, like, Charlie, what do I do when I'm facing this pressure? It's like, you do the hard thing anyways. You do the hard thing in spite of it. You do not, bend to your administration just because they're pressuring you. And his answer was always, Turning Point USA will back you when your school punishes you, right? That was always kind of his thing, right? Because that's who he was. He would put the full force of his company behind students who were facing the same kind of pressure people like myself, people like you guys, people like Candace Owens, people like Aubrey, all of us are now facing from the very same institution that used to protect free thinkers and thought criminals, right? It's obvious, guys. It's so obvious. You don't have to look hard. You just have to go back 2-3 years. Look at the company, the kind of things that it would amplify, the narratives it would amplify when Charlie was around, and where did those go? There are still some that remain. I'm not saying it's all gone, right? Of course, the election part of Charlie's still there, but that's not the core of who he was, right? And I need everyone to remember that, and also just remember that he was a human being first, right? Before anything else, he was a human being, and a father and a good man, I think. And then, Blake Neff comes on Twitter and says he became a better man when he left Candace Owens. It's insulting, actually, to think that he wasn't already a good man. And I think it's disrespectful to even imply that. Charlie's character would be influenced or shaped by those he was around, because it was quite the opposite. Charlie was shaping the character of everyone he was around, and he did that everywhere he went. So listen to voices like mine, like Candace, like people who knew him, because there's a reason they're trying to have you think that something that isn't true is, and that you have to ask why. And then the more we do that, the more we'll get to the bigger picture that I think people are missing. And that's what Charlie himself was pushing us towards. And I think that's what he was so very close to fully unmasking publicly. And I think that they, unfortunately, had primed him and put him in a position where if he ever did get to that point, what we saw happen would have happened anyways. So it's tragic. It's unfortunate. I pray for justice. I pray for, a return to God, just for our nation, for our people, and that more people are encouraged to speak up and stand for truth and not be afraid.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. I guess let's end this on a happy note. What was your, tell us your favorite memory of Charlie that you can remember.
There's so many over the years that it's hard to pick out one, and I've just had a couple now in spaces that are escaping me. But there's always early days when I went to Las Vegas. I got pulled out. I had to kind of sneak out of school as a high schooler, and I got on a bus at 6 a.m. and they bused a bunch of us to Las Vegas. Charlie was hosting a Sean Hannity roundtable with the Trump family, and outside of it just being a cool experience, getting out of that event after and, walking through Caesar's Palace, Charlie kind of spotting me out, asking me how I was doing. It's just again, as far back as that 2016, before he had all the fame, everything like that, he was just a good person, a good man, a good friend, first and foremost, right? He cared to, look you in the eye, address you, just at least ask how you're doing. And there are plenty more that I'm sure I'm not remembering right now, but that was one of them for sure. And everywhere we went, it seemed like, especially on the college tours, as the guy on the front camera, someone who'd known him for a long time, he was always finding unique ways to to just riff and joke with me. And you know, the one I remember most is there was this guy who wore a shirt that said "Keep Steak Legal," and he was just like, "That's gonna be my next T-shirt, right, Mitchell?" And I just was like, "Sure, Charlie, like whatever you want, dude." You know, like it's just like this casual like. And it was any time, right? And again, like you could watch Charlie in debates and stuff. He was very like expressive with his eyebrow, and I got a lot of those as the person who was like right here, you know. And so it's like he's debating and I'm right here, and so I would just get his reactions, and even if he didn't say something, I kind of like knew what he meant, right? And I guess because like we kind of grew up in this industry together. Granted, we weren't always in each other's direct line of work up until kind of the end there, and again at the early days. But you know, it's one of those things where we were always in the same spheres. We always had the same mission. You know, we were kind of working for the same end goals. And Charlie was again a human and a friend and a person first before he was a political figure and a Republican mouthpiece. So don't forget that. You know, there's a man behind all this too, and he was a pretty damn good man.
Very good man. Very special man. There's only one Charlie for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Mitchell, for joining me. And like I said, you're welcome back anytime. I'm sure there'll be a lot more we can talk about in the future.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun to see how this evolves. Thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we got to finally make it public. I know it's like 6 months late or 7 months late, but you know, again, I waited because I was concerned, and we've seen what happened. And I should have just done it. I should have just done it back then. I'm kind of kicking myself for not, but again, everything happens for a reason, and I trust God in this, and I think He has me right where He wants me right now. So, again, thank you. I appreciate it.
I agree, yeah, man.
Thank you.
You guys, like I said, you go follow him on X, Artifacts Memoria. How do you say that?
Memoriam, I think. Yeah.
Memoriam. Okay.
Memoriam. It's just Artifacts Memoir for short. You know, that's why the ad's shorter.
There you go. So that's his handle right there.
And yeah, please go check out
him.
the thread that I made. The disinformation wars, the one that's pinned right there. It's tracing the last kind of 2-3 years of Charlie's life.
These guys not
2023.
know this was taking place.
So the more we learn about Trump getting, if there are two shooters,
find out the kind of man that
the
they're
Warren
trying
Commission,
to
which
make
was the
you
official
forget,
report on the JFK assassination, was fraudulent and was faulty.
Also, be sure to follow Kelvia, my co-host, Conservative KFC on X. Thank you for joining me, Kelvia, and doing this interview with me.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm glad you spoke out. I'm glad Kelvia spoke out. I'm glad. Honestly, I want more people inside Turning Point to speak out. And maybe you can help us out with some stuff we're working on, actually, Mitch, because we got some stuff coming up. Some other employees which have agreed to speak out. So we got some interviews coming up. Maybe you might want to participate in.
Cool.
Maybe we'll do a round table or something.
Shoot it my way. That'd be fun. I'd love to look at it for sure.
Definitely.
And stay tuned. I'm writing a book. It's going to come out eventually whenever I have the time to write it. So just stay tuned on that as well.
I can't wait. Yeah, I'll get a first copy from you.
Oh, you'll get a signed copy, brother. Don't even worry about that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess with that, we'll end the show. Thank you all. I love you all. I appreciate you all. See you on the next one.